Yeah, it is challenging, and in some ways you're saying sort of, where do you start? And of course you have to work on many different fronts at once. One of the critical features of a professional learning community, whether it's within schools or between schools or a small group of people, is what we call a compelling core purpose, having a reason why we're together. If you haven't got a reason why you're together, you're not going to stay together. And having a shared focus for your work. And that focus may change depending on the needs of the children and the young people. But in terms of it in some ways taking capacity to build capacity and having some readiness, it always helps if you have good relationships anyway that are trusting. And people, there's some very powerful research from the United States about relational trust between people and professional learning communities that shows that it's really important that people respect the diverse strengths that they bring to the community. So what we don't want is a community of everybody being exactly the same. It really helps if there's a little bit of creative tension in there and conflict and people have different things to offer, but we need to respect that. It helps if there's a personal feeling of personal regard and care. People have to be competent. They have to really have their own sense of an improvement orientation and wanting to continue developing their own practice. And people have to show integrity. In other words, they have to do what they say they're going to do. And a lot of that really helps develop that readiness. But some of it just happens by being involved in work that matters. And what we find with a lot of teachers, although they may be nervous at the outset of the idea, for example, of observing being observed, having someone come in and observe their teaching, or observing a colleague's teaching, it's a very productive way and a very powerful way to develop your practice. I remember when I started out as a new teacher, I was observed very early on, and I was videoed as this interview is being videoed in my classroom. And it's incredibly powerful to watch yourself teaching, and even more powerful if you have a colleague with you who's watching you, whether they're watching the video or watching you, and asking those kinds of, why did you do it that way? Not in a negative way, but in an interested way that gets you to think about your practice. So that's why we call that a critical friend, not because they're negative critical, but because they're getting you to think more critically about what you do.